Jesus is calling. Jesus called out the best and the worst in people. The Gospels are plain about that. And it seems that the best is often called out of people at their worst, and the worst is called out of people who believe they are at their best in the Gospels. It's an odd paradox, but that goes along quite well with the paradoxical nature of the Gospels, right? Paradoxes are threaded through. The first will be last, and the last will be first, and the meek and the powerless will inherit the earth, not the rich and the powerful. And of course, at the very culmination of it all, the creator of all executed on a cross. But this morning, this is the paradox that I would invite us to meditate on, that Jesus calls out the best in people and he calls out the worst. He seems to often be fishing for which it's going to be. Fishing for those who, despite how bad their situation is or how bad they themselves seem to be, have even a crack of an opening for the best to emerge out of them. And then also fishing for, or at least attentive to, those who, in the fact that they are assured of their offering the world their best, somehow when the actual best comes around, which would be Jesus, their best is revealed as at best an illusion, and then their worst, that is lurking right there beneath the surface, arises. So it seems that that's an effect that love with a capital L, agape, divine love, can have on us. Love is not all pleasant, lovely, soft, and warm. It can call out our worst as easily as it can call out our best. So if Jesus is God in flesh, love manifest in human form, then it's most evident in the stories of the gospel as we read about the seeming worst of people becoming their best and the seeming best of people becoming their worst. So the prostitute with 7 demons, right, is one example. She who was maybe as bad as one could be, at least to everyone around her, the effect that love had on her was that she was healed, restored, became one of the disciples of Jesus, extending through her life the life and love of Jesus in the direction of others. Her very best, still at the heart of who she was beneath layers of sin and sickness, was called out of her. And on the other hand, the religious leaders, the keepers of the status quo and keepers of their position of authority and privilege, they, you could say, became the demon-possessed, honestly. They became the demon-possessed even as Jesus was all about exorcising demons from people's lives. They became the demons, deciding that they needed to shut Jesus down, shut him up, eliminate him. For them, the encounter with love called out their worst. So a good question for us might be, if we encountered agape in pure human form, like in the person of Jesus, would our best or our worst be called out of us? I think we could take a wild guess by considering how entangled or attached we are with all of that which is less than loving. How insecure are we about being told that we are wrong or off track, for instance? Because if purified love would probably be doing some of that to us, wouldn't you guess? Telling us where we're off track or plain wrong in what we are thinking or how we are being. Wouldn't you guess that probably there are thoughts and ways that we cling to that are beneath what love requires of us? And if I just stop and think about how well I tend to take my beloved spouse Tracy's telling me when she thinks I'm wrong, I'm not sure I'd do much better with love telling me and love would always be right, while I'm certain at times Tracy's wrong about me being wrong. You know what I'm saying? So that's a thing. And then how do I think I do with what true love, divine love, might require of me? This is what I'm so struck by in this story of Jesus calling the disciples, how quickly and freely they do what love asks of them, leaving their jobs, their home, their father, and they follow. Maybe it's because they were sick and tired of it all anyway. Maybe. We don't know. Maybe that's why Jesus called them in the first place. The fishermen who were not sitting pretty in the economy of the Roman Empire, but actually pretty crushed by it. Pretty crushed by the Roman Empire's economy. Supposedly, the fishermen of Galilee were exploited massively by the empire. Of course they were. We shouldn't be surprised by that. The workers and the locals got the worst of the deal, while the ownership class, the rulers, most removed from the actual work of the industry, claimed the wealth and the benefits. Familiar story. So maybe that's why when Jesus called, the disciples were so ready to follow him. And maybe that's why Jesus went to the shores of the Sea of Galilee, because there he knew were people ready for some change, and why he didn't go to those much more comfortable in their situated lives at the top of the Roman Empire. If love called us to get up and go, would we go? I'd like to believe I would, but I'm not so sure. And not only am I not so sure I would get up and go, I wonder if love calling me to get up and go might create the opposite response, a hunkering down, a resistance, a ton of justifications for why love was a little out of her mind to ask me to get up and go. In other words, love's call, I could imagine, could call out not the best in me, but the worst. So while we're thinking about it as a church, another good question is, what is love calling us to as a church with regard to this big, beautiful building of ours, right? That's the big question of the open door, that the open doors is encouraging us to think about. Is love asking us, how do you stay financially viable, First Congregational Church? What if love is asking us something more harrowing than that? We most all of us know and can imagine what is needed to make our church financially healthy and viable for the future. We are very responsible and very skilled at that in general as a people. And we could all argue for why that's important. I'm not saying it's not important. But what if love is asking something more than that? What if love is really asking and doesn't really care a whit about our financial viability, but cares much more that we as a church are responding to those who are suffering in our wider community and the world? What if that's what love really cares about? What if love is calling us to do something more than keep ourselves afloat financially? And if we can't imagine what in the world that would be as a church, then is love revealing our best or our worst? But what is also interesting in this, I think, do you know what else along with love has the capacity to call out the very best or the very worst of us? The opposite of love. Evil, wickedness, villainy, or depravity. There's a call. I hear that phone going off somewhere. There's a call also that evil can make in this world, that can call out the very worst of us if we are not careful, but ironically, evil's call can also call out the very best in us, right? I mean, what is it that Mr. Rogers' mother would say to him when he encountered scary things in the news? His mother would say, what? Look for the helpers. No matter what's happening, you will always find the people who are helping. No matter how dark, how grim it gets, you will always find the helpers there. That's an example, you might say, of how evil can call out the best. Who are the people helping in the face of the terrible acts of immigration enforcement right now? Who is allowing their best to be called out by the evil of masked government agents shooting people and taking women and children and elderly? And where is evil multiplying evil by calling good people to lesser deeds? Or where good people find themselves justifying bad things? As the authorities arrested Jesus and the religious leaders scapegoated him, their evil called out the worst in the crowd, remember? And when given the choice to release him or crucify him by Pilate, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Evil calling out the worst and multiplying evil. And on the other hand, when Joseph of Arimathea sees what his people are doing, he was a Sanhedrin, so he was a member of the high Jewish legislative and judicial council. When Joseph saw what they had done to Jesus, crucified, executed him, he gave the disciples his own tomb and said, "Lay Jesus here." One of the Sanhedrin did that. "Lay him here in my tomb." And there it is, evil calling out the best in someone. How about for you and for me? When we encounter much less suffer at the hands of bad or of the bad or the evil, what does it elicit in us? Is it rage? Is it resentment? Is it desire for revenge? Or a renewed commitment to find a way to do good in the response to it all? I'm afraid evil is running amok right now. And it's not evil as a person or a people, but it is a force in this world that runs counter to good and counter to love. And sometimes it's just helpful to name it. That there is this force that runs counter to good and counter to love in this world. And we must be committed to remaining on the side of good and love and rooting out in our own hearts those shards and shreds and shadows of the worst of us that both love and evil can elicit in us. Obviously, just being a follower of Jesus, a Christian, does not guarantee that we lead with our best. There are plenty of Christians in this world and country who sure seem to be having the worst called out in them right about now. With the depravity that's sitting high and bold out of the highest offices of our land. And some of us, even if it's just in our passivity, are having the worst called out in us too. Sloth, is one of the deadly sins, no less insidious than pride or wrath, the ancient church fathers would say. Sloth could be considered a laziness to help because we are too comfortable. But I don't want to leave us there, so let's go back for a moment, for an ending here, to the call of love. Not the rampant nature of evil, but the call of love. That's why even the call of evil can elicit the best in us, because love is so powerful a force in this world. And we as Christians would say that love is the source of the world, it's the sustenance of the world, and is the destination of the world. So obviously, it's the most powerful of forces and will have the final say. And if it doesn't, to adapt an often quoted phrase, if love doesn't have the final say right now, it's because it's not been finalized and more is still to be said. Amen. Love calls out to us. Are we hearing it? What is it asking of us? What is it calling out in us? Can we catch it when the worst in us is being tweaked or triggered? Can we allow our loved ones, our community, our friends to call us on the carpet when they sense the worst being triggered in us? Can we think and act and love from that true self that Mary Magdalene discovered beneath her brokenness? That true self that is there within us. Call it the light of God within, call it Christ within, call it the angel of our better nature, of our higher selves, such that we are willing to leave the entanglement of all of our nets and follow love wherever love wants to take us.